Hello, viewers. I'm Mr. Dilip Kumar Pal. Stands before you or comes today with a new video, as well as important video, which relates with powers of Chinese premier or Chinese prime minister. This video mainly focuses some qualifications, terms of Chinese prime minister, as well as important powers which Chinese prime minister possesses. And I'm sure that my viewers will collect important facts relating to Chinese prime minister, and it will be very much helpful to plus 3 post graduation and those students who are aspirant for good jobs in the competitive examinations. Let us start about the Chinese premier or prime minister. In the world, China is the fourth largest country in area. Its area is 95 lakh 96,961 square kilometer. Again, on the basis of population, China is the most populous country in the world. On the basis of 2020 report, its population is 140.21 crores. And in this large country, in this populous country, there is a prime minister. And the prime minister of China is not powerful for the constitutional provisions assigned to him, but because he is powerful, because he is the second most powerful person in the Communist Party of China. In India and in Britain, prime ministers are powerful because of constitutional provisions. But in China, the prime minister is powerful not for the constitutional provisions, but he is powerful because he is the second most powerful person in the Chinese Communist Party next to President of the People Republic of China. And in China, the first prime minister was Zhou Enlai. He continued from 1949 to 1976. Now the prime minister is Li Keqiang. He was appointed the prime minister on 15th March 2013. But prior to Li Keqiang, who was the 7th prime minister of China, prior to him, Wen Jiabao was the 6th prime minister of China, and he continued from 2003 to 2013. And now the prime minister of China is Li Keqiang. He is the 7th prime minister of China. And on the basis of 1982 Constitution of China, the term of Chinese prime minister is 5 years. But he can be prime minister for another term. He can become prime minister for 2 consecutive terms. But after 2 consecutive terms, after some gap of years, he can become prime minister or not. About this, Chinese constitution is silent. Because in America, the president can become the president of America for 2 consecutive terms. After that, he cannot become the president of America. But in China, the constitution is silent whether a person will continue as the prime minister or whether a person will become the prime minister of China after holding the post for 2 consecutive terms, and after a few years he can become prime minister. About this, he can become prime minister or not, about this Chinese constitution is silent. Anyhow, in China, the prime minister is very powerful, and the Chinese prime minister is powerful because his name is suggested by the president to the National People Congress. How the prime minister of China is appointed? The name of the Chinese prime minister is suggested by the president of People Republic of China to National People Congress. After that, National People Congress will elect the prime minister formally, and after that the president will appoint him as the prime minister of China. After that, the Chinese prime minister will suggest names of state councillors, secretary general of state council to the National People Congress, and the recommendations of the Chinese prime minister to the National People Congress about the vice premiers, state councillors and secretary general of state council, these names are suggested by the prime minister of China to National People Congress to be appointed. After that, National People Congress will formally approve these names. So the Chinese prime minister has full power over the appointments of vice premiers, state councillors and states and secretary general of state council. So the prime minister of China is very important and very powerful. Now we'll discuss what are the major powers Chinese prime minister possesses. The first important power of the Chinese prime minister is power of appointments. The Chinese prime minister plays a very important role in the appointment of vice premiers, state councillors and secretary general of state council. In which way he appoints them? The names of vice premiers, state councillors and secretary general of state council are suggested by the prime minister to the National People Congress, which is the central legislature of China. When the prime minister will suggest these names, National People Congress will elect them formally. Okay, so this is the first important function of the prime minister of China. Again, if the prime minister of China will have to be removed, then NPC can remove the prime minister of China before the expiration of his term. So this is a major power of the Chinese prime minister. The second important power of the Chinese minister is the power of coordination. He brings about coordination among councillors, vice premiers and secretary general of state council. It is the function of the prime minister that he will coordinate among the state councillors, among the vice premiers and secretary general of state council. The prime minister is the head of state council, and in the state council there are state councillors, vice premiers and secretary general of state council. So it is the function of Chinese premier to bring about a coordination among these functionaries, because without a coordination among these persons, the state council cannot function. So it is the primary responsibility, it is the primary function of the Chinese premier to bring about a coordination among these persons, include state councillors, vice premiers, and secretary general of state council. The third important and crucial function of the Chinese Prime Minister is the chairman of the State Council. The State Council of China is the highest executive body. In China, the State Council is the highest executive body. It is like Cabinet of India. So it is the function of Chinese Prime Minister to convene the meetings of State Council, to preside the meetings of the State Council, and he will decide what will be the final decision of State Council. So the Prime Minister is the head of the State Council. He is the chairman of the State Council. So as a chairman, he convenes meetings of State Council, he presides meetings of the State Council, and he gives important directions to the member of State Council. This is the third important function of the Chinese Premier of People's Republic of China. Then the fourth important function of the Chinese Prime Minister is power of supervision. If the Chinese Prime Minister is the chairman of the State Council, he is the supreme person of the State Council, he supervises the work of state councillors as well as prime ministers. So how the members of State Council or state councillors are functioning, how the vice premiers are functioning, whether they are carrying out their assigned function or not, it is the function of Prime Minister to keep and watch. He supervises the work of state councillors, vice premiers, and he also delivers important directions to them. So it is the fourth important function of the Chinese premier. Finally, the fifth one, which is very important, that is power of policy formulation. The Premier of China plays a very important role in the policy formulation of work of State Council. What type of policy will have to be followed in the internal sphere, what type of policy will be adopted for the foreign affairs, it is the function of Chinese Prime Minister to prepare. So the function of the Chinese Prime Minister or the Chinese Premier is to prepare the internal policy and external policy of the country. So in this video we have discussed about Chinese Prime Minister. We have discussed presently who is the Chinese Premier. He is Li Keqiang. He came to office on 15th March 2013. He is the 7th Prime Minister of China. Before him, when Jiao Bao was the Prime Minister, he was the 6th Prime Minister. When Jiao Bao, he continued from 2003 to 2013. And the first Prime Minister was Zhou Enlai. He continued from 1949 to 1976. Then we have discussed what is the term of the Chinese Prime Minister, that he can continue for 2 consecutive terms, but whether he will continue after that for more terms, about this Chinese constitution is silent. And we have discussed how Chinese Prime Minister is appointed. His name is suggested by the President of China to the NPC, National People Congress, and National People Congress will give him appointment formally. National People Congress will elect him, and after that the President of China will give him appointment. And we have discussed crucial functions of the Chinese Prime Minister, like power of appointment. He plays a very important role in the appointments of vice premiers, state councillors, and secretary general of State Council. Because the names of vice premiers, state councillors, and secretary general of State Council, these names are suggested by the Prime Minister to the National People Congress. And when the names will be suggested by the Prime Minister to National People Congress will appoint them formally. So the Prime Minister plays a very important role in the field of appointment. Number two, power of coordination. He brings about coordination among vice premiers and members of State Council. Again, he is the chairman of State Council. As chairman, he convenes, presides, and controls the State Council. Number four, power of supervision. At the head of the State Council, he supervises the work of State Councillors and Vice Premiers. And finally, power of policy formulation. He plays a very important role in the preparation of policy in the internal sphere and external sphere. So, I request my viewers to watch this video till the end and collect important facts relating to Chinese Prime Minister, which will be helpful to them to prepare a nice notes. I request my viewers to subscribe my channel so that valuable videos will be within your reach. Thank you, my viewers. I request you to suggest any new video you want through my channel, so I will try my best to provide new video to you. Thank you, viewers. Again we will be here with another video. Till now, goodbye to all.